the secret meeting my wife tried to hide, and the message I recorded. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. I sat in the dark of my home office, my thumb trembling over the play button, praying my gut feeling was wrong. The voice-activated digital recorder felt as heavy as a solid lead brick in my sweaty palm. The only illumination came from the blinking red LED, mirroring my racing, terrified heartbeat. My name is Mark. I am 34, and for the last 5 years, I genuinely thought I was living a flawless dream. I am the founder of a highly successful architectural design firm in the city. I built my business from the ground up with sleepless nights and a relentless drive to provide a spectacular life for my beautiful wife, Sarah. We had the sleek modern apartment, the luxury cars, and the picture-perfect marriage. But recently, the solid foundations of that beautiful life had started to violently crack. Unexplained missing funds from our joint accounts, her phone screen constantly facing down, and her sudden emotional distance had pushed me to the jagged edge of paranoia. I desperately did not want to become the jealous husband. I wanted to trust the woman I married. But the numbers simply were not adding up, and my gut instincts were screaming that something was fundamentally wrong. I took a shaky breath, the cold air burning in my tight lungs, and finally pressed the small rubber play button. The initial audio was frustratingly scratchy. Just the dull roar of the highway and the rhythmic hum of her SUV's tires rolling on the pavement. I closed my eyes, feeling a massive wave of suffocating guilt wash over my conscience for secretly invading her private space. I was honestly a fraction of a second away from hitting the stop button when the loud sound of her car door opening changed my destiny forever. A heavy thud followed. Someone else had confidently climbed into the passenger seat. Then, I heard Sarah's voice. It wasn't her sweet, angelic tone. It was a cold, calculating laugh that sent a physical shockwave of nausea tearing through my nervous system. "He is so utterly clueless. It's actually getting pathetic," she sneered maliciously into the hidden microphone. The familiar laugh that followed her cruel words made my blood run absolutely cold. To understand the absolute devastation of that moment, you have to understand the perfect illusion Sarah had so masterfully created. When I first met her at a charity gallery event 6 years ago, she was a breathtaking force of nature. Sarah was deeply charming, effortlessly funny, and possessed this incredibly sweet, supportive persona that made everyone in the room feel instantly important. She was my biggest cheerleader when my design firm was just a struggling startup operating out of a cramped garage. But over the last 6 months, the woman I married slowly vanished, replaced by a stranger who was always fiercely guarding her digital life. She changed the passcode on her phone, claiming it was a new corporate security policy for her marketing job. She started taking long, unexplained evening walks to clear her head. And then there was the money. I had noticed small, seemingly random withdrawals from our joint checking account. $5,000 here, $3,000 there. When I gently asked her about the missing funds, her sweet persona instantly weaponized into a defensive, gaslighting attack. "Are you seriously tracking my spending now, Mark? I moved it to my high-yield savings for our future. Why are you being so insanely controlling?" She would snap, tears welling up in her perfectly mascaraed eyes. I would always instantly back down, completely overwhelmed by immense guilt for daring to question her integrity. I spent months silently questioning my own sanity, wondering if the immense stress of running my firm was making me paranoid. How long could you smile at the person plotting your ruin while genuinely believing you were the crazy one? I was constantly walking on eggshells in my own apartment, desperately trying to fix a relationship that I didn't realize was already completely hollow. I was so blinded by my love for her that I ignored every single blazing red flag waving right in front of my face. I finally realized my perfect wife was hiding a completely different, horrifying secret life. The breaking point finally arrived on a crisp Thursday evening when Sarah meticulously laid out her bulletproof alibi for the upcoming weekend. We were sitting at the kitchen island, eating dinner, when she let out a dramatic, exhausted sigh. "Babe, I'm going to have to spend all day Saturday over at Chloe's house," she said, looking at me with those big, innocent eyes. "She's coming down with a terrible flu, and she needs someone to make her soup and help her clean up the place." It sounded like the perfect, loving sisterly gesture. There was only one massive, glaring problem with her story. Chloe is a pediatric nurse, and just 2 days prior, I had briefly texted Chloe to ask about a birthday gift idea for Sarah. During that brief chat, Chloe casually complained about having to pull a brutal, mandatory double shift at the hospital that exact same Saturday. Sarah had absolutely no idea that I possessed this piece of information. The realization hit me like a speeding freight train. She was intentionally fabricating a solid 8-hour window of unaccounted time, using her own sister's non-existent illness as a completely uncheckable shield. I felt the blood completely drain from my face as I nodded slowly, forcing a supportive smile while my mind spun violently out of control. Of course, honey. You go take care of her. Tell Chloe I hope she feels better soon. I lied smoothly, the bitter taste of deception heavy on my tongue. That night, lying wide awake next to my softly snoring wife, the agonizing knot in my stomach tightened into an unbearable, burning agony. I couldn't live in this agonizing state of perpetual suspicion for another single second. First thing Friday morning, I skipped my morning meetings, drove entirely across the city to an obscure electronics store, and walked straight to the surveillance aisle. I paid cash for the small black device that would ultimately destroy my world. Planting the digital audio bug was easily the most nerve-wracking, terrifying experience of my entire life. Early Saturday morning, while Sarah was upstairs taking a long shower and singing along to her favorite pop playlist, I quietly slipped down into the building's dimly lit parking garage. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely peel the adhesive backing off the heavy-duty industrial Velcro strips. I crawled onto the cold concrete floor, reaching deep underneath the passenger seat of her luxury SUV. I securely mounted the tiny, voice-activated recorder directly to the metal frame, completely out of sight unless someone was physically lying on the floorboards looking for it. I rushed back upstairs, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, just in time to see Sarah walking out of the bedroom, completely dressed to kill. She wasn't wearing comfortable sweatpants to go take care of a sick person. She was wearing a stunning, form-fitting designer dress and expensive perfume. "You look incredibly nice for a day of making chicken noodle soup," I noted casually, fighting the violent urge to vomit. She didn't even blink, adjusting her diamond earrings in the hallway mirror. "Oh, we might grab a quick coffee later if her fever breaks," she lied effortlessly, flashing me that trademark, dazzling smile. I walked her to the front door, the suffocating weight of my secret mission pressing heavily down on my chest. "Have a great day, Mark. I love you so much," she cooed softly, wrapping her arms around my neck. The sheer, terrifying ease with which she could look directly into my eyes and deliver a completely fabricated reality absolutely terrified me. As she walked down the hallway toward the elevators, the silence of our massive apartment suddenly felt completely deafening. I spent the next 8 agonizing hours pacing the hardwood floors, staring blankly at the television, absolutely dreading the impending revelation. I smiled and kissed her cheek, knowing it might be the very last time. At exactly 2 o'clock in the morning, while Sarah was deeply asleep beside me, dreaming whatever dark dreams a liar dreams, I crept back down to the silent garage. I retrieved the small black device from under the car seat, my fingers completely numb with terror. Back in the isolated darkness of my home office, I plugged my noise-canceling headphones in and pressed play. After the initial agonizing minutes of highway noise and the heavy thud of the passenger door opening, I heard Sarah's cold, calculating laugh. "He is so utterly clueless. It's actually getting pathetic," she sneered into the quiet cabin of the car. And then, the male voice responded, "You have to admit, babe, the guy makes it entirely too easy for us." The oxygen instantly vanished from my office. The room started spinning violently. I knew that smug, arrogant voice better than my own brother's. It was Greg. Greg was my oldest friend in the world, my former college roommate, and the brilliant, highly paid lead accountant who managed every single financial aspect of my design firm. We had built our careers together. He was the best man at my wedding. The rustle of expensive clothing and the wet, unmistakable sound of them aggressively kissing echoed loudly through my headphones, making my stomach physically heave into the nearby trash can. My brain simply could not process the catastrophic magnitude of the betrayal. It wasn't just some random stranger from a dating app. She was sleeping with the man who held the absolute keys to my entire financial kingdom. The two people I implicitly trusted most in the universe were sharing a secret, twisted life right behind my back. As the audio recording continued to play, the sickening reality of their secret afternoon meeting quickly shifted from a simple, dirty affair into something infinitely more sinister and dangerous. I recognized my best friend's voice instantly, and my heart shattered into tiny pieces. I desperately wished the secret recording was just about their disgusting physical affair. But as I sat paralyzed in the dark, the conversation between my wife and my best friend shifted entirely to business, and my blood turned to absolute ice. "How do the accounts look this week?" Sarah asked, her voice entirely stripped of any warmth, sounding more like a ruthless corporate raider than a wife. "I managed to siphon another 25 grand into the offshore LLC hidden under the vendor expenses," Greg replied casually, the distinct sound of a lighter flicking and a deep exhale of smoke following his words. "He hasn't noticed a damn thing. He's too busy actually running the company to check my monthly reconciliation reports." Sarah laughed again, a harsh, greedy sound. "Good. We need to stick strictly to the timeline, Greg. We have exactly 60 days before I drop the divorce papers on his desk. I want his personal accounts completely drained and the firm leveraged to the maximum limit before he even hires a lawyer." I gripped the edge of my mahogany desk so hard my knuckles turned stark white. They weren't just cheating on me. They were executing a highly sophisticated, systematic financial assassination. Greg, using his absolute access as my trusted accountant, was silently bankrupting my life's work to fund their lavish escape, while Sarah was perfectly playing the role of the loving wife to keep me entirely distracted and pacified. The sheer, psychopathic level of calculation required to look me in the eye every single day while actively stealing my future was beyond my comprehension. They were mocking my blind loyalty, treating my hard work as nothing more than a personal piggy bank for their twisted romance. They weren't just breaking my heart. They were actively planning to leave me completely destitute. The sun eventually rose, casting a harsh, unforgiving light across the sleek modern furniture of our apartment. I hadn't slept a single second. I had spent the entire night sitting in the same chair, meticulously transcribing every single damning word of their twisted audio recording into a secure, encrypted file. Now came the absolute hardest part of this waking nightmare. I had to put the mask on. I walked into the sunlit kitchen, my body running purely on adrenaline and black coffee, just as Sarah wandered in wearing my favorite oversized t-shirt. "Morning, babe. How did you sleep?" she asked brightly, wrapping her arms around my waist from behind and pressing a soft kiss between my shoulder blades. The psychological torture of feeling her touch, knowing exactly where those hands had been just hours prior, was utterly excruciating. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to violently shove her away, to throw the audio recorder in her beautiful, lying face, and demand the absolute truth. But if I confronted her now, Greg would instantly panic, destroy the deeply hidden financial evidence, and completely drain the remaining business accounts before I could legally stop them. I had to play the ultimate game of high-stakes chess. "Slept great, honey. Just a lot on my mind with the new downtown project," I lied smoothly, turning around to face her. I looked deeply into her eyes, searching for any microscopic trace of guilt, any hint of the monster I had heard on the tape. There was absolutely nothing. Just the warm, loving gaze of a woman who was perfectly comfortable destroying my entire life. I poured her coffee with a steady hand, smiling at the monster wearing her face. The moment I arrived at my firm's downtown office, I initiated the most terrifying secret investigation of my entire life. I waited precisely until Greg left the building for his usual 2-hour, expensive sushi lunch. The second the elevator doors closed behind him, I locked myself inside his immaculate, glass-walled accounting suite. Utilizing my master administrative override credentials, something I hadn't used in 3 years because I trusted him implicitly, I bypassed his secure desktop passwords. I bypassed the standard financial reports he normally showed me and dug deeply into the raw, unfiltered banking ledgers. The absolute devastation I uncovered in those digital files was infinitely worse than the audio tape. Greg had systematically opened multiple high-limit credit lines entirely in my name, completely maxing them out to secretly fund luxury vacations and expensive jewelry for Sarah. He had created a complex web of totally fabricated vendor invoices, funneling nearly $200,000 of my company's hard-earned operating capital into a ghost LLC registered in a completely different state. If I didn't aggressively intervene immediately, the firm I built with my own two hands would be completely bankrupt and buried under insurmountable debt within a matter of weeks. The sheer scale of his arrogant theft made me physically dizzy. He was using his brilliant, analytical mind to completely dismantle my financial security brick by brick, all while drinking my expensive scotch and smiling at my dinner table. I spent a frantic hour photographing every single fraudulent document, every hidden transfer, and every forged signature, uploading them directly to a secure cloud server. The massive offshore transfers proved my oldest friend was steadily bleeding my company totally dry. I desperately needed a reliable ally on the inside, someone who understood Sarah's twisted psychology but wasn't infected by her toxic lies. I sent a highly encrypted message to Chloe, Sarah's younger sister, urgently asking her to meet me at a small, obscure coffee shop situated far outside the city limits. When Chloe arrived, still wearing her blue hospital scrubs, she looked deeply concerned. I didn't waste any time with pleasantries. I slid my phone across the sticky wooden table, handed her an earbud, and quietly told her to press play. I watched the color completely drain from Chloe's face as she listened to her own sister laughing about my impending financial ruin with my best friend. Chloe pulled the earbud out, her hands shaking violently, hot tears of pure disgust welling in her eyes. "Mark, I am so incredibly sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking with raw emotion. She told me she was working late all those nights. She hasn't actually visited my apartment or checked on me in over 6 entire months. Chloe had always been the honest, grounded sibling, entirely exhausted by Sarah's constant need for glamorous drama and manipulative games. Hearing the sheer, unadulterated cruelty in Sarah's voice completely shattered whatever remaining familial loyalty Chloe possessed. I carefully explained my precarious situation. I couldn't confront them yet, not until my assets were completely secured and legally shielded from their thieving hands. I needed Chloe to act perfectly normal, to casually feed me information about Sarah's true schedule, and to absolutely maintain the illusion that nothing was wrong. Chloe wiped her tears, looked me dead in the eye, and promised to help me. Armed with undeniable audio evidence and a mountain of fraudulent banking documents, I quietly hired Richard Vance. Vance wasn't a standard, friendly family lawyer. He was a highly feared, deeply ruthless corporate litigator and divorce attorney known throughout the city for utterly destroying his opponents in court. Sitting in his imposing, dark oak office, I laid out the entire catastrophic situation. Vance reviewed the financial transfers and the audio transcripts with cold, clinical precision. "They've handed you a fully loaded gun, Mark," Vance said grimly, leaning back in his leather chair. "Now, we just have to quietly aim it." Under Vance's strict, strategic direction, I initiated a total, invisible lockdown of my entire life. We secretly opened brand new, highly secure corporate banking accounts at a completely different institution, quietly redirecting all incoming major client payments away from Greg's desperate reach. We filed emergency, sealed injunctions to instantly freeze the fraudulently obtained credit lines the absolute second the trap was finally sprung. Vance meticulously drafted a totally brutal divorce petition citing extreme financial fraud and infidelity, specifically designed to completely bypass our standard prenuptial agreement and leave Sarah with absolutely nothing. For 3 agonizing weeks, I lived a double life. I went to work, joked with Greg at the water cooler, and came home to cook romantic dinners for the woman actively trying to destroy me. It required a level of deep psychological endurance I never knew I possessed. We laid the legal trap so perfectly that neither of them felt the jaws snap. The meticulously crafted illusion almost spectacularly imploded exactly 5 days before my planned execution date. Sarah and I were browsing a high-end boutique downtown when she confidently tried to purchase a $3,000 designer handbag using one of the joint credit cards I had secretly instructed Vance to quietly freeze. The polished sales clerk politely handed the heavy platinum card back with an apologetic smile. "I'm so sorry, ma'am, but this card is registering as fully declined due to suspicious activity." Sarah's beautiful face instantly contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. She shot me a terrified, wide-eyed look, clearly wondering if I had finally discovered Greg's massive financial siphoning operation. My heart hammered violently against my ribs, but my face remained perfectly calm and utterly confused. I quickly pulled out my personal, secure phone and masterfully improvised the biggest, most crucial lie of the entire ordeal. "Oh, damn it, the bank fraud alert just texted me." I laughed smoothly, feigning mild annoyance. "I used that exact account yesterday to make a massive deposit on a completely ridiculous, surprise luxury gift for our upcoming 5th anniversary party. They must have locked it down for security. Don't worry, babe, I'll clear it up with the bank manager tomorrow." The intense, visible wave of sheer relief that instantly washed over her face was absolutely sickening to witness. Her panic completely vanished, instantly replaced by a smug, greedy excitement over whatever expensive jewelry or car she falsely believed she was getting. She bought the lie completely, her greedy eyes gleaming at the promise of more money. I decided the absolute perfect venue for their ultimate destruction would be our highly anticipated 5th anniversary dinner. Sarah had spent weeks obnoxiously planning the lavish event, booking the most exclusive, ridiculously expensive private dining room at the city's top restaurant. She had invited 20 of our closest mutual friends, my prominent business associates, and, of course, her secret lover, Greg. She genuinely believed this extravagant dinner was her final, victorious lap before totally pulling the plug on our marriage and walking away with my entire fortune. When the night finally arrived, the private room looked absolutely stunning, bathed in warm candlelight and overflowing with expensive floral arrangements. I sat at the head of the long table, dressed in a sharp tuxedo, watching Sarah passionately working the room. She looked breathtakingly beautiful, playing the absolute perfect, adoring wife to an audience of our closest peers. Greg was sitting just 3 chairs down, casually sipping a $200 glass of scotch I had unknowingly paid for, occasionally shooting Sarah these subtle, sickeningly smug glances when he thought nobody was watching them. The sheer, suffocating tension inside my chest was almost unbearable. My right hand was buried deep in my tuxedo jacket pocket, my thumb resting heavily on my unlocked smartphone, which was secretly, wirelessly connected to the private dining room's state-of-the-art Bluetooth audio system. The extravagant, multi-course meal felt like it dragged on for absolute years. Finally, the waiters cleared the dessert plates, and the ambient music softly faded. I raised my glass to the silent room, my finger resting heavily on the button. "If I could have everyone's attention for just a moment," I announced loudly, my voice steady and commanding, cutting through the low hum of polite conversation. The room instantly quieted down. Sarah beamed radiantly at me from across the table, fully expecting a tearful, embarrassing declaration of my undying, pathetic devotion. Greg leaned back in his expensive chair, a condescending, arrogant smirk firmly plastered across his face. 5 years ago, I thought I married the absolute love of my life. I began, looking directly into Sarah's eyes. But recently, I received a very special, incredibly eye-opening anniversary gift that completely changed my entire perspective on our beautiful relationship. I'd love to share a small piece of it with all of you tonight. Sarah looked slightly confused, her perfect smile faltering just a fraction of an inch. I didn't hesitate for another second. I pressed the play button on my phone. Instead of a romantic video or a sweet song, the sharp, undeniable sound of Sarah's cruel, calculating laugh suddenly blasted at maximum volume through the restaurant's expensive surround sound speakers. "He is so utterly clueless, it's actually getting pathetic." Her recorded voice echoed loudly off the elegant mahogany walls. The entire room physically froze in absolute shock. Then, Greg's recorded voice boomed out. "I managed to siphon another 25 grand. He hasn't noticed a damn thing." I let the devastating audio play for exactly 45 excruciating seconds, loudly broadcasting their dirty affair and their detailed, 60-day plan to completely bankrupt me to everyone they desperately wanted to impress. The horrific sound of their secret scheming blasted loudly through the elegant dining room speakers. The immediate, Explosive chaos that violently erupted inside that private dining room was something I will profoundly remember for the rest of my life. Sarah's radiant, confident face instantly drained of all color, turning a sickly, terrifying shade of pale gray. She aggressively lunged across the table, knocking over expensive crystal wine glasses, desperately screaming at me to turn the audio off. Greg literally leaped out of his chair, furiously looking around for the hidden speakers like a trapped, panicked animal, stuttering out completely incoherent, pathetic excuses to the utterly horrified guests. Absolute silence fell over our mutual friends, their faces twisted in pure disgust and complete disbelief. I calmly tapped my phone screen, instantly killing the audio, and picked up two thick, heavy manila folders resting silently beside my chair. I walked slowly over to Sarah and dropped the first heavy folder directly onto her ruined dessert plate. Happy anniversary, Sarah. Those are the finalized divorce papers, along with a massive civil lawsuit for extreme financial fraud, I stated with chilling calmness. I then turned my attention to Greg, who was physically trembling in his expensive suit. I shoved the second thick folder aggressively into his chest. You are permanently fired from the firm, Greg. My lawyers have officially frozen your hidden offshore accounts, and a full criminal report regarding your aggressive corporate embezzlement has been forwarded directly to the authorities. They stood completely paralyzed in the center of the lavishly decorated room, utterly humiliated and completely stripped of their toxic power. They stared at the legal documents in absolute horror as their perfect plan completely disintegrated. It has been exactly 14 months since that violently explosive anniversary dinner, and the spectacular fallout was absolutely biblical. Greg was swiftly indicted for massive corporate fraud, completely lost his prestigious CPA license, and is currently facing significant prison time while drowning in insurmountable legal debt. Thanks to the ironclad audio evidence and Vance's ruthless, calculated legal strategy, the presiding judge completely voided Sarah's pathetic claims to my business assets, leaving her with absolutely nothing but her ruined public reputation. She currently lives in a tiny, cramped apartment on the bad side of town, completely ostracized by our entire social circle. Rebuilding my life and my business hasn't been an easy journey. The deep psychological trauma of such an intimate, profound betrayal leaves deep, ugly scars that require heavy therapy to fully heal. I had to learn how to trust my own judgment again, to stop constantly second-guessing every single interaction I have with the people around me. But the design firm is completely thriving again, securely managed by a highly vetted, fiercely loyal team. If there is one crucial piece of advice I can offer to anyone reading this, if your deepest gut instinct is loudly screaming that something is fundamentally wrong in your relationship, you must absolutely listen to it. Don't let someone's charming smile gaslight you into actively ignoring the blazing red flags. Sometimes, the hardest, most agonizing thing you can possibly do is the exact thing that ultimately saves you. I lost my wife and my best friend, but I finally got my life back.